time. This is the spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. I'm Saad in southeast London, and with me as usual is Gregory. Gregory, how are you doing and how is the weather where you are?
It is bright, warm, and it's okay. One is fine.
Okay, good. Here in London, here it is right now, it's overcast, but it was sunny and nice and warm. Um, Not hot, but nice and warm. So, welcome listeners to the spiritual discussion program. As I said, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And every week we have a topic for discussion. The topic tonight is resolve to open yourself to purity. Resolve to open yourself to purity. And if you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1.com. That's the number one, blessradio1, that's number one.com. And there, if you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a box called Bless Chat. You can type in any questions or comments there. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being. We've got some background there. Okay, now let that sound go first. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with seven seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic that we are discussing tonight is resolve. I'll let the sound go because we can't help that, I'm afraid. So, the topic that we're discussing tonight, listeners, is resolve to open yourself in purity. Resolve to open yourself in purity. People might be wondering, oh, how did we pick such a topic? Well, it's let's say there's a quote in the Grail message very much along these words. So not exactly very close to these words, let me say. So I thought I would like to use that. And just to remind you, you can contact us if you have any questions or comments on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And the other way you can contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting, that is blessradio1, that's the number one, .com. If you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see a box called Bless Chat. You can type in any questions or comments there. Now, Gregory, you know I like to look up the meaning of the words in the topic in the dictionary. And let's see what it says today. So the first word we have is resolve. And I've got two meanings given there in the dictionary. The first one is settle or find a solution to a, in brackets, a problem or contentious matter. So resolve, the first meaning is to settle or find a solution to, which could be a problem or a contentious matter. What do you say about this definition there, Gregory?
Well, these definitions, when considered in accordance with the laws, they are pointers and to some extent helpful.
Okay, let's look at the second meaning, see how helpful it is. This one says, decide firmly on a course of action. How good is this one?
That is more precise, nearer to what resolve is.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Right, so let's move on. The next key word is open. And again, I've got two meanings in the dictionary. First one, it says allowing access, passage, or a view through an empty space, not closed nor or blocked. Let me repeat that. So this is the word open in the dictionary, giving the first meaning I found, allowing access, passage, or a view through an empty space, not closed or blocked. How's that, Gregory?
Again, these are pointers, although not complete, but they are pointers, giving one the perception or the view of what it is.
Okay, let's continue. The second meaning for the word open I've got is exposed to the air or to view, not covered. Is that any good there, Gregory?
But you find that these things, one is considering the laws of nature, of creation, not anything arbitrary. And what you yourself have read out, these are pointers, but they are not um, complete in themselves to be used categorically.
Okay. Not complete, you said. What is it that is missing or incomplete?
Well, if one were to use that, what you just read out, then it will give a picture of.
Okay.
There's some
Sorry.
background noise.
Yes, I'm afraid it's not. We are three people or three, how can I say, sources of connections here, and I'm not the source of this particular connection issue. Let me say, and I can't control that. I'm afraid. So, similar to what happened a little bit earlier, it wasn't coming from my side. So I'm afraid I'm not able to control how that noise is coming. So just let me just bring you back then, Gregory. So I wanted to ask you, with this definition of open, that something you said the definition is not complete, which means something is missing. So I was wondering, what is it that is missing?
What is missing is that there is no framework.
Mm, okay, okay. So the framework, what would you like to say
It's
about
the
what?
framework of the laws of creation.
Right,
These are the laws of nature or the divine laws. Every expression must be considered using this framework. Only then does it make any sense. Otherwise, they'll be like pointers, but they they are fuzzy. They are not precise
right.
because
Okay,
there's no context as such.
okay. And the framework should be the laws of creation, is what you're saying.
Precisely correct.
Okay, okay. So maybe a little bit later we will go through those laws of creation. So I know we do that pretty much in every show, but we will do it at some point. So now the next word, keyword I'm going to say, I looked up is purity. So now in the dictionary, again, I found two meanings. The first one is freedom from adulteration or contamination. And they give an example of that, the purity of our drinking water. So that's freedom from adulteration or contamination. How good is this one, Gregory?
One will repeat the same thing. It is a pointer.
Okay.
A
All right.
pointer which gives a view, but the real perspective, again and again, is not there.
Okay. Okay. Let's continue. I've got a second meaning given here uh, for purity. It says freedom from immorality, especially of sexual nature. And they give an example there. White roses represent purity and innocence. So the meaning here, Gregory, second meaning, freedom from immorality, especially of a sexual nature. Is that relevant here in our discussion?
Strictly speaking, that is completely irrelevant, but because there have been distorted images of what purity is, then you find that that expression is brought into it. But again, the need is there to paint the picture or to provide a precise picture of what the whole of that expression that you use is. Only then will it make some sense.
Okay, thank you. You've led me exactly to my next line, you can say. I know I'm using Google, but at least we can, how can I say, examine what it says, even if we are not 100% happy with it. So this is what I found. I looked at the whole expression, resolve to open yourself in purity. And what it says to resolve to open yourself in purity means to make a firm decision to embrace a life of moral and spiritual cleanliness, often with a focus on actions and thoughts that are pure and unblemished. This resolve implies a commitment to holiness and a desire to avoid influences that could compromise one's character or spiritual well being. Let me repeat that. There's quite a few words there. So it says here to resolve open yourself in purity means to make a firm decision to embrace a life of moral and spiritual cleanliness, often with a focus on actions and thoughts that are pure and unblemished. This resolve implies a commitment to holiness and a desire to avoid influences that could compromise one's character or spiritual well being. So, Gregory, is this giving, how can I say, a better picture of this expression?
The expression is a particular word there, which is cleanliness. That particular expression, cleanliness, gives a picture of something which is unadulterated. But again, these are expressions which are used like everyday expressions, the framework of which really has never been considered,
Right.
because it's just accepted. Um, it is fuzzy, but it's
Okay.
accepted and used, and so many just take whatever comes. But that expression itself that you read out, which is the topic of what we are handling today, that expression itself is not, is more like a figure of speech.
Hmm.
And it is because it is a figure of speech, it therefore means one need to go back a bit. Because if you repeat it, one is supposed to open oneself to purity. It
Okay.
is, it is not possible to open oneself to purity as such. However, it is possible to open oneself to the radiations of purity. So, behind the topic which is chosen, the precise meaning is to open oneself to the radiations of purity. Because the purity that is written there has the capital P. In that case, it is personalized. However, the radiations of purity flow within or in accordance with the laws of creation. These radiations are the vibrations that purity sends out. It is that the human personality must open up to. That means it, the human personality that is striving for maturity must be open such that these radiations have an impact on it. But the human personality can only allow it to have an impact on it when it vibrates, when it has a vibration which is close to that of the radiations which comes through. Very simply, here we are discussing. And in our discussions, these are power waves which are radiated over space. For one to be able to understand our discussions, to be able to interpret our discussions, to be able to perceive our discussions, there must be an instrument that is able to absorb the radiations of our discussions and then interpret it. If, however, that tool is not there, then the radiations will flow by unused. So it is the radiations of purity which streams into creation, which streams into nature. It is these radiations that the human personality is asked to open up to.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, about what you've said there. There's a lot you said, actually. Sometimes, just to explain, when we pick a topic, sometimes we shorten the words in the topic, and by doing that, we sort of lose the actual full picture, let me say, of what the words are supposed to represent. So, like we said, the topic tonight is resolve to open yourself to purity. But as you have pointed out, Gregory, that really is to resolve to open yourself to the radiations, you could say, from purity. And even you said that purity is like a personal, and radiations are being, you could say, being poured out from or through, coming from purity, which we are absorbing. I mean, there's a lot to take in, if I'm honest there. So as we go through the show, hopefully things will become a bit much clearer in this matter. And we are saying resolve to open yourself or oneself, that is us, to purity. So we also, there's somewhere we have to be by being open, a particular way that we have to be open to receive this radiation of purity. So all that we have to consider as well. Yes. And once, Gregory, what you've said in these, the last answer to the last question, now the concept of what we've been reading in the dictionary and what you have said stands out very clear. Where I will look at it is the dictionary is answering in an earthly way, or considering things in an earthly way, and not considering the, let's say, higher world, which is, let's say, I'm going to use the word heaven, or let's say beyond the earthly, if I can say it like that, which is all still part of creation. Creation is not only earthly, there is beyond this earthly or the physical world, if another way to put it, there is the beyond, which is also part of creation. And so and this being a spiritual discussion show, we do look from the spiritual angle, you can say, in every topic. And so there has to be, this dictionary meanings we keep finding are a bit too earthly in many cases. Even when we talk about heaven, or if you looked up those words, which are non-earthly, the definition still in the dictionary is not, let's say, as perfect as it could be. So we have this deficiency of the dictionary meaning. And that's why Gregory is pointing out this point of being, the meanings being incomplete. They are pointers, not actually um, giving the complete picture that we really need to examine these topics properly. So this is our, let's say, difficulty. But the reason I pick the dictionary definition is just as a starting point, so that we people might be having that. They may have that understanding which the dictionary says, and then very quickly we realize, no, that's not what we are talking about. We are coming from another angle. Let's say from the spiritual perspective, which is a higher perspective. So, and yet that also has to be understood, you know. So these are the points that we have to grasp if we're going to understand these things, these points and concepts properly. Um, Now, Gregory, this purity, well, continuing about the actual topic, which is resolved to open yourself to purity, or to more correct would be the radiations of purity. So I found again a bit more in Google. I just want to keep exploring this. It says here's a breakdown of the different points of purity, which is moral purity. This involves abstaining from actions that are considered impure or immoral, such as engaging in harmful or sinful behaviors like adultery, lying, or stealing. So, Gregory, these uh, actions, can I say, this, which are defined as moral purity, um, at least they're in this, somebody's defining it as that, which is the example being engaging in harmful or sinful behaviors like adultery, lying, or stealing. So, on the surface, Gregory, these words seem to be again considering earthly activities. I was wondering if there's something uh, those words apply to in a spiritual conception as well. Um, this moral, because these moral actions seem to be, how can I say, connected only to the earthly, and as if the sin can only be done on the earth. So, is there more of another aspect there which is missing, Gregory? Because we are noticing there's a lot of incomplete and missing concepts here. So, can one be having lying or adultery or stealing in a spiritual conception?
Actually, for many an expression, one will find that there is the spiritual concept is so far away from the earthly concept. And sometimes the variance is so great that it's as if one becomes the opposite. When only when one considers things from the framework of the laws of nature or of creation, which laws of creation are also spiritual laws, only then can one have a perspective that is usable from the spiritual perspective, and even making a correction to the earthly perspective. So, what many will regard as adultery in the earthly perspective could be very different for what it really means from a spiritual perspective. In the so-called Ten Commandments, these have been checked thoroughly, and the pointers are there. What all these things mean. However, because many are so hooked up to very narrow earthly concepts, it is very challenging, if not almost impossible, for them to accept other pictures other than the way they have considered it. Therefore, you'll find that unless we have this framework, which framework is what made it possible for the human individual to come into existence. Unless we use that particular framework, then you will find that most of the things, even words, expressions, whatever one cares to call it, they will not be in accordance with these laws. And not being in accordance with these laws itself, that is some form of deviation. That is some form of impurity. Whereas those things which are in accordance with these laws, which swing unconditionally in these laws, that means they resonate with these laws. These are the things which are referred to as being pure. Being pure in the way nature has presented it to us, nature in its evolution of the different forms, the way nature allows radiations to flow. If it goes along that way, then it is pure, else it is impure. So from these little expressions, one can quickly start putting together what the framework is. And that being the case, much of the confusion that has arisen due to arbitrary arrangement of these words, most of these things will vanish. So whenever one hears of purity, or whenever one wishes to use that expression purity, it is easy or it is simple enough to consider the radiations which stream towards creation and to be able to partake of this radiation. One has to be in a state where one vibrates in accordance with these radiations. Because when one vibrates with when one has similar vibrations or equivalent vibrations, then one is able to absorb the power which streams through these radiations. And in absorbing of this power, the individual strives to make use of these radiations in the sense in which it has been granted to this individual. In such a way, then is acting in purity. The expression one for all and all for one then comes into the whole happening, in the sense that when one makes use of these vibrations of purity, it is beneficial not only to the individual that has absorbed of this radiation, but also beneficial for its environment, beneficial for the weavings. That means his activities, whether the activities are in thoughts or in deeds. It is beneficial in the sense it will not entangle the individual or entangle his or her neighbors such that they are unable to rise. Then one sees the one for all and all for one. Then one has the clear picture of mutual exchange of radiations, mutual sharing of the benefits. Then it becomes a win-win. Only when that is done, when the individual harbors such a concept, is he or she acting in purity.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for explaining this concept uh, or of resolving oneself to open to the radiations of purity. Um, uh, which you can, one way put it as putting yourself in a state so you can tune in and to receive these um, radiations of purity. And in the or vibrating, as you said. So, um, so this gives you a very, how could I say, higher level picture than simply the earthly concepts that we might have. Um, and in a way, what we are pointing to, this is about creation activity, not just earthly activity. So really, we need to raise our consciousness to recognize these concepts. So we'll look at this further in a moment. I want to let the listeners know that you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Uptrushin. And if you wish to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is resolve to open yourself to purity. Resolve to open yourself to purity. And if you wish to join in the discussion with any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044793958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. And we are also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box. Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 again, space, Grail message, space, the topic of our show tonight, which is resolve to open yourself to purity. And After the show, you can listen to the recording of this show again on YouTube. So you have to put the same words in the search box. So you go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, that's the number one, space, Grail message, space, resolve to open yourself to purity. And there's one other place we are broadcasting, that is Zeno, that's Zeno .fm / Bless Radio 1. That's the number one again. Now, Gregory, and I apologize already for listeners that we're having some background noise coming and we're unable to take it away at the moment. I'm sorry for that. I hope it is not disturbing you. So now, Gregory talked about this process or condition that we have to be in to resolve to open yourself to purity. So one question one be wondering, why do you want to do that? What is the benefit? And I don't want to jump to there's a saying in the Grail message, this point concept that we have said, it is coming from the Grail message, and there's you could call it a theme in the Grail message, which repeats this phrase about purity. I don't want to, not specifically this particular phrase, which is resolve to open yourself to purity, another phrase which is repeated through many times through the message, which I don't want to go into it just yet. But I want to ask you, Gregory, what is the purpose of resolving oneself to open oneself uh, uh, to purity, or to, as you put it, particularly to the radiations of purity?
Basically, one must ask oneself the purpose of these radiations. These radiations are meant for further development of creation in accordance with the will that permitted creation to come into existence. It must be made very clear that it is possible for an individual to absorb of the streams of power through creation and not use these streams of power in accordance with the laws of creation through which it, the human personality or the human spirit particle, came into existence.
Thank you.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, thank you. Hello, listeners. This is Bless Radio, and this is a spiritual discussion program. Apologies for dropping out. We lost a connection, and now we have it back. And I'm just getting Gregory back as well. So we should be restarting now. And apologies for that break. A few minutes we lost. So I'm just waiting for Gregory. Hello, Gregory. Are you there now?
Yes, I've been here.
Okay. Just apologies, listen, just to say to everybody, there was a disconnection with Bless Radio for Gregory and myself, but now we are reconnected. And apologies for that gap of 5 minutes or so. I hope you can rejoin us, those who have dropped out. Um, right, Gregory, I'm trying to recap where we were. Um, so, and I've actually lost the track on it. So basically, we've talked about there's a spiritual connection that we have to, or a spiritual concept that we need to grasp when we talk about resolving to open ourselves to the radiations of purity. It is a state, you can say, that we human beings have to uh, uh, um, don't want to say get into, but to be in, to be able to receive these radiations of purity. Um, and actually, now somebody has actually sent a question, a listener, um, uh, and he said, "How can someone open himself to spiritual purity?" So, Gregory, can you help us with that? How can someone open himself to spiritual purity?
Well, thanks for that particular question. How can someone open itself to spiritual purity? First, spiritual purity is not the same thing as earthly purity, because that which is spiritual is different from that which is earthly. There must be homogeneity. In spirit, one needs to open oneself. To open oneself in spirit is to be able to recognize through one's intuitions, through one's intuitive perceptions, the rays or the activities that strike the individual in all its awakenness. These activities could be in thoughts, could be in deeds, and also in one's intuition. When you have the scenario in which one's intuitions are translated in accordance with this will of the Almighty, then it is said that they resonate. That is where you have one for all and all for one. In the sense, just as you, the individual, are striving for ennoblement, so is the other person. That being the case, because you are both striving for ennoblement, you come together and work together and serve together. That is one aspect. There are many in the arts who are able to perceive a piece of music, which others are unable to perceive. But in their personal perception, they translate that which they have received into harmonious sounds, which harmonious sounds bring joy and happiness, not only to themselves, but also to others. That means they have received, they have made use of it, and they have shared of this, as it has given them joy and happiness, so it also gives others joy and happiness. These are ways of fulfillment. There are also the scenarios where even a very a kind word said to another who is in distress, helps to relieve that individual. This is in accordance with the will of the Almighty, and such kind words which they themselves must have received through experience and have passed it on, that has been done in accordance with the will of the Almighty. Therefore, it is the basis of purity. If, however, those kind words which they themselves have received, or like the musicians, that which they have received, instead of using it to encourage others to do better, they use it to create dissension, to create hatred. That in itself cannot be purity. That will be a contamination of what purity is, because that individual absorbs that which has been beneficial to it and has clouded its environment, has clouded the thoughts of his thoughts in such a way others do not find solace in it. That which is not contaminated, one would say, is pure. But if an individual is able to absorb of the streams of power and do not use it accordingly, then that becomes impure. So that which is referred to as purity is of benefit not only to the individual, but also to the environment that the individual creates around himself and also to others, because it's able to suck the individual higher in thoughts and in intuitions. That being the case, just as he or she was able to receive of those blessings from on high and has passed it on for the enjoyment of others, those who are higher than he himself or herself will continue to strive to pass more to that individual. And in that fashion, the individual keeps rising higher and higher because more will be granted to it, finer intuitions will be granted to it. And in that case, it will keep rising, although unconsciously. That is the work of purity, because the radiations which have streamed out have been used in accordance with the will while they were sent out, and therefore they are pure. If they were distorted to something else, they become contaminated, they become impure. And that is why that expression, keep the heart of your thoughts pure. By so doing, you will bring peace and happiness. Peace in the sense that there will be more harmonious activities. Where you have harmonious activities, there is peace. Where there is disharmonious activities, there is no peace. So these are the things which one finds. Unless an individual strives to interpret these activities only in accordance with the laws of creation through which it came into existence and continue to persist and exist, then you will have that in the case of pushing aside these laws, arbitrariness comes in and subsequently confusion. And that is not what is required. For creation is that container in which man is granted the opportunity first to come into existence, to mature, to know how to live in it aright, and subsequently in working with others, furthering it.
Thanks a lot. Hope you can hear. Thanks a lot, Gregory, for that explanation and answer. Giving a, let's say, detailed picture of this process of how to um, open yourself to, the purity, or to the radiations of purity, spiritual purity. I just want to let listeners know that you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Uprushing. If you wish to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that: www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is resolve to open yourself to purity. Resolve to open yourself to purity. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting, that is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. And we are also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 again, space, Grail message, space, topic tonight, which is resolve to open yourself to purity. Resolve to open yourself to purity. So that's for the live show, which we broadcast on Tuesday evenings, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. In fact, after this show, you can listen also to the recording of this program again on YouTube with exactly the same search words in the search box, which I'll repeat now. So go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1, space, Grail message, space, resolve to open yourself to purity. And of course, you can listen to the recording of our other previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, we're talking about how to open oneself to purity or the radiations of purity. Now, I was thinking, Gregory, we need to consider what you could say our environment, because I'm thinking if you were somewhere in a noisy place, you won't be able to have the peace, because we say we are looking for peace, but we also need to have an environment of peace. And so what I was wondering, there's one when if where one wants to open oneself to purity, does that mean that we require like I was going to use the word special practice, but maybe I don't want to emphasize that word special practice. I just want to give, like I said, the environment. Should it be like a prayerful silence? Should one be maybe beforehand have, how can I say, these are only examples, not absolute that you must do this. So I'm saying being prayerful, having silence, maybe fasting a few days before, let's say, or meditation. Is there any such requirement, Gregory, to have this, allow ourselves to be open, to open ourselves to receive these radiations of purity?
One may consider that there must be that which is harmonious, but it doesn't mean one has to fast or there must be silence. Many a time, some listen to music. Music is not silent, or is it? In music are harmonies which tend to vibrate with the soul. So that's considering that silence must be taken out, that may not be in accordance with wishing to do that which is helpful. So you will find that what many are considering is that which is what we call distraction. For there is the need to focus. Focus in the spiritual sense. In the earthly sense, you will find that many a person, instead of asking for one thing, they will ask for power, they will ask for money, they will ask for so very many things. In that case, they have distracted themselves. And they have not even considered that what they are requesting for will be of benefit to them, but they want it. There are some who consider that, oh, they must fast. Then you must ask yourself, what is the purpose of fasting for someone who, for quite a while, has not had any food intake to ensure that its body functions properly? To be able to make progress, that has nothing to do with the lack of nutrients that will make one's body function harmoniously. So the so-called purpose of fasting, as such, depriving yourself of those things which will help your body to function properly, that violates that principle of harmony itself. If, however, the individual has been a glutton who eats too much, in all naturalness, then he needs to cut it down. But for someone who has not had access to food for days, to ask that person to continue to fast, then in that person's thoughts, there will be all sorts of disharmony. And such disharmony take on strong forms in one's intellect, where the pangs of hunger will drive the person from one direction to the other direction, where the stomach will be rebelling and the individual will be suppressing it. Such a fight is not harmonious. So how does that then help in preparing the body to achieve that which it needs to achieve? Therefore, you will find that many a thing that the human personality gets involved with turns out to be some form of distraction. There are some who will have to shout when, in quotes, they are praying. There are some, like has been stressed before, who have so many requests in their head. There are some who considers who consider the works of their so-called enemies, and they dish out so many hatred calls. Then ask yourself, how can that be of benefit to the individual? So generally, many a thing which some consider nowadays to be of help turn out to be the reverse. And therefore, many are unable to achieve the slightest things that will lead to harmony and therefore lead to peace. And only through peace, which is achieved through harmony, only through that, and that alone, can you find the individual vibrating in such a way as to be able to comprehend that which it must do.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this answer. I've got another question similar to that, but I'm going to put it to the side for the moment because my colleague has written a list of questions. This is Mrs. Harriet Jarvis Hoppe, which I would like to go through. I'm just seeing the first one. I believe we've recovered it, so I will not go there. Okay, so I'll read it as it says here, and then we can make sense of it. It says, "Can it be that the priority we give to such, I'll put the word phrases, as pure as driven snow, or the pure essence of, say, the content of an idea or a substance, is actually an unconscious keening of the inner core of humanity?" Now, I have to say this word keening, I haven't heard of it before, so I looked it up in the dictionary. It says the action of wailing in grief for a dead person. So let me repeat this now. Can it be that the priority we give to such phrases as pure as driven snow or pure essence of, like content of an idea or substance, is actually an unconscious, I'm going to say the definition, unconscious action of wailing in grief for a dead person, or in this case, I would say is the inner core of humanity. So it sounds a bit difficult to follow, and I'm going to just try and repeat it again, Gregory, because I want to understand what I'm saying as well. So, can it be that a priority we give to such phrases as pure as driven snow or pure essence of is an idea or a substance is actually an unconscious action of wailing um, in grief for coming from the inner core of humanity. So, yeah. So, is this pure? Can I say, Gregory, these phrases are they coming from our inner core, coming from unconsciously from our inner core of humanity?
A lot of the phrases that many a person utters, some of it, not all, have arisen from the human soul, and through one's intuition is passed on from the back brain to the frontal brain. In this particular, on such particular occasions, the frontal brain expresses it without adding its own, without any distortion. You find these expressions that there are many of them. And that is why it is said unconscious. Unconscious in the sense that this is something that has arisen from within the spirit or from within the soul, and it has come straight without interference or without adverse interference of one's intellect. And only later will some, in their reflections, understand what has been given. There are many such. But there's this other part one should consider. You use the words, is it killing or I can't remember.
Keening,
Keening.
like the word keen, like you're a keen a sportsman, but this is a verb, keening, and in the definition it says the action of wailing in grief for a dead person.
Yeah.
But it does, yeah,
Yeah, I want to
yeah.
get in very quickly.
Hmm.
The this wailing, one must look at these things comprehensively. When the human personality, through the attraction of homogeneity, is granted the opportunity to incarnate, first it stays in the nearest neighborhood of the mother, and it then takes over the human body which is being prepared, and then is born to this earth. That human soul already existed in a state. It has only been granted new opportunity to incarnate in order to improve itself, to carry out all sorts of activities such that it will sever itself from that which is unworthy, such that it will also spread the blessings just as he himself or herself has received blessings. The time comes when before too long it gets to an age where it must sever itself. That means the soul must sever itself, or the spirit must withdraw from the gross material physical body, which is recognizable for all those who are granted flesh and blood. You now have the scenario where the spirit withdraws. That process, one may call departure or death. There is a lecture in the work In the Light of Truth which elucidates this very clearly, the process that the human personality that is departing this earth goes through. Now, one must ask oneself, why the wailing? Was this soul not permitted to come into the earth in order to experience? If it has been living in accordance or striving in accordance to the laws of creation, then subsequently is able to pass on the blessings that it has received. And before too long, it itself will need to sever itself and proceed further for further experiences in the beyond. So the wailing and the sorrow which many a human personality have attached to it, strictly speaking, has no place, unless, however, there has been negligence. But many a person considers that either starving themselves through fasting or wailing and crying and asking for help, in the sense that we want this soul which is departing to return. That one shows commitment, or it shows the person is highly spiritual. The lack of discipline in considering holistically the tasks of the human personality, that in itself is the cause of the wailing and the gnashing of teeth. For if you have the scenario where the human personality strives in accordance with these laws of nature through which it itself came into existence, then its weavings, the path which it needs to follow, will become, in a step-by-step manner, it will become sunny. It may not be sunny all of a sudden, but gradually, here or hereafter, the good volition would have built an environment around it, such that in its departure, it is gratitude that is offered to the Most High for granting it that opportunity to incarnate in order to experience and expiate those things he had done wrongly in the past. If only subsequently it brings joy to many a person through its kindness, through the way it has lived. Then, subsequently, that which is sorrowful, which must have arisen due to neglect or due to indolence of the spirit, those things which have caused many a worry will vanish, because in its thorough examination of the laws of creation, many a thread that would have held it down is severed. Then and only then will it then realize that those words which says, free at last, free at last. Thanks to the Lord Almighty that the individual is free at last only in accordance with the laws of creation through which it itself came into existence. That is what creation is about, and not about sorrow, not about wailing.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this picture and explanation you've given there. Um, I just want to remind the listeners that you're listening to Bless Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Uprushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is resolve to open yourself to purity. Resolve to open yourself to purity. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting, and that is blessradio1, the number 1.com. If you scroll down the homepage, you will see a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. And we are also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1 there, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show tonight, which is resolve to open yourself to purity. And of course, you can listen to a recording of this show after the show with the same words in the search box, which is Bless Radio 1, space, Grail message, space, resolve to open yourself to purity. And of course, you can listen to the recording of our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, I've received a question from a listener while you were responding to the last question. And let me go there. The listener is saying, often people struggle with what they think purity is. They resolve not to think sexual thoughts or thoughts of anger and find themselves at a loss as the struggle overcomes them and the thoughts they try to avoid can engulf them. But this is not natural. That's a question he's asking. Let me repeat that. Often people struggle with what they think purity is. They resolve not to think sexual thoughts or thoughts of anger and find themselves at a loss as the struggle overcomes them and the thoughts they try to avoid can engulf them. But is this, I will say like this, but is this not natural? Or, but sorry, but this is not natural. There is a statement. Um, so, Gregory, yes, what about this point from the listener?
I hope I don't understand what the question is.
Okay, okay. If you try to repeat it, what you think it is, and then I will just confirm that.
Because I've had it twice, even on both occasions.
Yes,
I couldn't have clarity.
I
But
see.
one thing is, what is clear to me is that the expression purity is wrongly understood. And it has been made so earthly and distorted because once purity is mentioned, what then happens is that many a person start considering so-called sexual intercourse or something of that nature. Whereas that only comes into question when there has not been any framework. The individual who in its activities, who strives in such a way so as not to bring any harm to itself or its neighbors or those around him, who acts in such a way that is of benefit to himself and also to others, acts in purity. He acts in purity because having sown in his activities or her activities, the reciprocal action will be such that that individual will be lifted up gradually from one step to the other, such that before too long, when it passes on to the beyond, he, in the same type of purity, will be sucked up by those who have similar tendencies to be of help to that individual. Because that trust has been established in its character. This has nothing to do with the sexual tendencies that many hold nowadays. For if, in accordance to human opinions, which are not laws, if purity is only to be considered in this earthly way, where sexual intercourse is concerned, then all motherhood, all womanhood will be soiled because procreation will now be brought to the pettiness and the opinions of human personalities. That means they themselves will consider that whatever has happened is sinful. Even in the so-called sexual intercourse, there could also be purity from both parties. So one should not bother oneself as such with the opinions of men, because each person has manifold opinions, laced in confusion, and at the same time baseless, because there's no framework. But whoever considers the framework of the laws of nature, in which there will always be a reciprocal activity, in which there will be an attraction of homogeneity, in which attraction that they themselves haven't acted in a virtuous manner, there will be others who will take up that thread and attract. Such attraction is what many may call love. For in love there is an attraction, and in attraction there is love. And that's love which brings peace and harmony to the individual is beneficial, that will lead the individual higher, upwards, towards its home from where it started, first as an unconscious spirit gem, and now having understood through the purity of its activities, has been attracted home now as a self-conscious human spirit prepared in cooperation with others in furthering the values in nature, in creation. For that, strictly speaking, is the task of the human personality.
Thank you, Gregory, for this answer. Um, and hopefully, listener, you were able to uh, get that picture that Gregory was painting there. Because what, unfortunately, as he correctly pointed out, we have this concept of purity in the earthly sense, uh, which is not the real sense, and and really the first sense should be the spiritual sense, and then it can be applied to the earthly sense. But unfortunately, we seem to start from the earthly first, and then try to turn it into the spiritual world, whatever that they think that they're doing. But it's like starting with the wrong end or with the wrong foundation, and then of course there is no surprise when you get a misunderstanding. So thank you for that, Gregory. I'm now just thinking of other questions that my colleague has put in, and let me pick something. Okay, here's this one. Can it be that to approach the reality of a resolve to open oneself to purity, we must actually begin with the word faithful or even faithfulness? So let me read this again. Can it be that to approach the reality of a resolve to open oneself to purity, we must actually begin with the word faithful or even faithfulness?
To open oneself to the radiations of purity, one must strive to ensure that its vibrations in the sense of the laws of creation will be such that whatever is able to receive, it will be that it makes use of it to ensure it brings benefit to itself and others. When you reach that stage, then subsequently you maintain that state continuously. Then you are faithful. That means you are able to perceive of something, to hold on to it in accordance with the way it was granted you. You have made use of it to bring benefit not only to yourself but also to others. In that state, you maintain faithfulness. In maintaining that faithfulness in purity, others who are most likely to be higher themselves, higher than yourself, and also in a similar state, are able to pull you through the attraction of homogeneity. So only those who maintain the faithfulness in deeds, only those who maintain the faithfulness in activities, only those grant the opportunity of being attracted in faithfulness. For there is the law of the attraction of homogeneity. Faithfulness in the sense trust for trust, confidence for confidence. As long as the human personality maintains that faithfulness, it keeps the door open to the radiations of purity, such that those radiations will keep coming and it keeps making use of it. So one can see the picture. Faithfulness does not mean acting in such a way in accordance to your belief and there is no conviction. Belief must become conviction through deeds, conviction in accordance with the laws of creation, conviction which arises through inflexible weighing and examining. Inflexible weighing and examining is an activity, therefore also a work, which the human personality must strive continuously to maintain. That in itself is faithfulness.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this answer. What it shows is that all these words that we use, I know every show we begin with the dictionary definition, and then we find that, as say, Gregory, you say it's incomplete, or the context is not fully there. There's always something missing, you can say. But even some of these words, they're not really, how can I say, accurate in their definition. Like we discovered this word faithful, what we human beings call faithful or faith. That doesn't, let's say, align with the, I mean, we use this word faith in a very general way. This is a faith, that is a faith. But the true faith, if I can say, is a living one. Not this, you could say, blind one, or following just for the sake of following, even out of habit. So that's not faith. The thing what we must accept, or we adopt something, we need to know what it is when we adopt it, not just blindly accept something. So this is this is how it's supposed to be. But then our idea of how it's supposed to be may not be aligning with how it's supposed to be. So this really makes us to wake up. Now, I've got another question. This one, it says, um, perhaps we are so deeply enmeshed in the jargon of the world, we need to begin at the beginning, more as little children than as the world-weary adults sat before a tome. This tome is spelling is Tome, and the tome means a book, especially large, heavy, scholarly one. Uh, so let me start that one again. Perhaps because we are so deeply enmeshed in the jargon of the world, we need to begin at the beginning more as little children rather than uh, as world-weary adults sat before a tome of useless information conceived by well-meaning men of letters in the centuries-old library of cast-in-stone misconceptions. Let me repeat that once more. Perhaps because we are so deeply enmeshed in the jargon of the world, we need to begin at the beginning more as little children than as world-weary adults, sat before a tome of useless information conceived by well-meaning men of letters in a centuries-old library of cast-in-stone misconceptions. Gregory, what do you say about this one? Uh, how we should
There's
be?
nothing much other than to say what Christ has said, except ye become as little children. For the children in their activities, they take each word and strive to understand the context. Behind them is like a clean slate. They're trying to write something. So first they have to grasp the context. With the adults, that's not the case. So many jargons have filled them so much that they are lost in the maze of the jargon which has been presented to them. And unless they first dismantle the jargon which have been so carefully erected, then you will find it will almost impossible for them to make any progress because they'll be going around in circles. So many a thing which someone has absorbed without understanding the meaning, many of these things will have to be shattered. Only then will they see the path which they may then need to follow.
Thanks for that, Gregory. I've got another question. Um, or perhaps we need to start from where we all have at least common ground without losing anchorage in the knowledge that there's far more to a resolve to open oneself to the word purity, let alone the concept of what we wish to aim for. So let me repeat this. Or perhaps we need to start from all where all have at least common ground without losing anchorage in the knowledge that there's far more to a resolve to open oneself to the word purity, let alone the concept of what we wish to aim for. Gregory, I hope you could follow that.
The question is, what is the common ground?
Um, yes, starting point where we can start. And
Well, if the common point or common ground is the starting point, there is only one starting point, and that starting point is the framework through which we communicate, the framework through which we carry out activity, and that framework is motion. That motion is a law of creation. It's a law in creation, has always been, and through motion came these laws. Through motion, we were also born into this earth. Through motion, we carry out activities whilst on earth in our physical body. Through motion, the individual must subsequently discard the physical body and journey on. So what is key is that which the human personality need to understand, not people's opinion. It is not an opinion that the individual is born on earth. It is a fact. It's not an opinion that the individual has to grow as a child to get into adulthood and gets into old age, if possible, but subsequently have to leave the physical body to journey on. That it's in itself is a fact. Therefore, these facts have an impact on every individual. Therefore, it's the common ground because it's common to everyone. And that being the case, the need is there to investigate further. Why am I here? What have I come to do? Only such will shatter the jargon which has been woven round.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this answer. We've come to the end of our show tonight, listeners, on the topic of resolve to open yourself to purity or to radiations of purity. Hope you've enjoyed the discussion. I would like to now end the show with a reading from the lecture Fate, which is, let's say, not from the, it's towards the end of the lecture, so it might not start in a very.
Hello?
Sorry, Gregory. I was speaking and I didn't realize I was on mute. Yes, listeners, I want to just say we've come to the end of the show tonight, listeners. Hope you've enjoyed the discussion on the topic of resolve to open yourself to purity or radiations of purity. Hope you've enjoyed the discussion. Now I would like to read something from the Grail message. This is from the lecture Fate, and it's towards the end of the lecture, and so this may not immediately come in the as in a flow as I would like. However, I will read it out. It is a great mistake to believe that at birth an absolutely new life begins, that a child is thus, in quotes, innocent, and that all happenings can be accounted for in only the short life on earth. If this were true, the existing justice would naturally require the combined causes, effects, and reactions to occur during the span of one earth life. Turn away from this error. You will then soon discover in everything that happens the logic and justice which are now so often missed. Many are alarmed at this and are afraid of what they still have to expect from the past through the reaction in accordance with these laws. But such are unnecessary worries for those who are in earnest about the good volition. For in the self acting laws also lies at the same time the certain guarantee of mercy and forgiveness, quite apart from the fact that with the firm beginning of the good volition, a limit is set immediately, a limit is immediately set for the point where the chain of evil reactions must come to an end. Yet another process of immense importance comes into force. Through the continuing good volition in every thought and deed, a constant reinforcement also flows retroactively from the homogeneous source of power, so that the good becomes more and more firmly established in man himself, emerges from him, and, first of all, forms accordingly the ethereal surrounding that envelops him like a protective covering, in much the same way an atmospheric layer round the earth affords its protection. Now, when evil reactions from the past return to this man to be redeemed, they slide off the purity of his surrounding or covering, and are thus deflected from him. But should they nevertheless penetrate this covering, the evil radiations are either immediately disintegrated or at least appreciably weakened, so that the harmful effect cannot manifest at all, or to a very minor extent. In addition, through the resulting transformation, the actual inner man to whom the returning radiations are adjusted has also become much more refined and lighter through the continuous striving for the good volition, so that he no longer has any homogeneous affinity with the greater density of evil or base currents. Similar to wireless telegraphy, when the receiver is not tuned into the energy of the transmitter, the natural consequence of this is that the denser currents, because they are of a different species, cannot take hold of anything, and thus pass harmlessly through without evil effect, redeemed by some unconscious symbolic action, the various kinds of which I will speak at some later time. Therefore, set to work without delay. The Creator has placed everything in creation into your hands. Make use of the time. Every moment holds disaster or gain for you. Dear listeners, that was a section I've read from the Grail message from the lecture Fate. Um, if you wish to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. Uh, Now, Gregory, do you want to say anything to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing listeners a beautiful week ahead.
Thank you. Same from me, listeners. Have a beautiful week ahead. We'll be back as usual next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time, with another topic. Good night and God bless.